Welcome to the Intrinsic First Leadership Podcast. I'm Aaron Robbins with Intrinsic First. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Be sure to stick around to the end for some debatably funny jokes that will hopefully leave you with a smile. And don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on our latest episodes. We're here to support you, and we'd love to hear from you. So drop us a comment below or reach out to us directly at info@intrinsicfirst.com. Ready to dive into the world of leadership? Let's get started. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us again. Last week, we were in a deep discussion about values and even getting into justice and things like that. We decided to split the podcast in two because it went so long, trying to keep these to about 20 minutes. So we're picking back up where we left off and jumping back into values for a second podcast to keep that discussion going. Mm-hmm. So let's roll back into it.
Yeah. Well, I think values are hard to visualize if you haven't really given much thought to your own values. So part of it, I hope, for you will be helpful to you, for you to begin to see, well, what do I think and how did I get there? And what is a value, program value versus a developed value? What I want people to realize is that a developed value is fundamentally more important and more usable than an acquired value that you just don't understand. You just do it.
So let's go back to the cigarette example.
Go.
I think we could use that one. I have some others too, but So let's say we're talking about the topic of smoking cigarettes, right? So you can have a value, or the belief would be, I think it's good or bad, or it's okay to smoke, or it's not okay to smoke.
Keep going.
Right?
Right.
So that's the value, is what you believe. And
what you believe is right or wrong, or because it's
right. It's right to smoke. It's wrong to smoke. It's right for other people to smoke. It's wrong for other people to smoke.
Yeah.
And so the self piece would be focusing on it's right or wrong for me to smoke. The other would be it's right or wrong for others to smoke.
Exactly.
Right? And so just making sure we're all clear on this, then that is also that would be the ends value. That's the outcome of smoking.
Bingo. And how do we get it as
right.
a second?
And then if you want to talk means or how you do that, then that's getting into, well, what do you think about having people be allowed to smoke inside? Right? And if they're looking at their self, is it okay for you to smoke inside a building or, in a public place? Or is it okay for others to smoke inside a public place?
Well, let's stop for a minute. Again, what would the reason for holding the value be?
We said stay healthy, right?
Well, so
yes,
if it's...
That's right. Where I'm going.
Yeah, but if it's programmed, there isn't really a reason. The reason is because that's what I was taught when I grew up.
That's right. It could be still for the right reason.
Oh, of course. It could be socially acceptable or socially just or fair.
Yes.
But the program piece, there's so many moving parts on all this stuff. The means and the ends, the social, the personal. Trying to just, using this example to figure out, so which is which and what's a belief, whether it's programmed or not. It's kind of, because I think of it as, well, if my parents said smoking's bad, I've never smoked before. I've never smelled smoke before, right? If that was the situation and you just think, no, people shouldn't smoke because that's what my parents said, that would be very programmed. But if you've smoked and you've quit and you've tried to quit and you haven't quit, or you did and then you didn't, and you back and forth and all, that typical stuff. And now you're in a situation where you understand what it's like when other people are around you smoking in a public place, and you understand what it's like when it's not. And you've thought through all of those situations and you've come up with, no, this is wrong for people to smoke in a public place because I've read the data about the impacts of secondhand smoke, and I've read and I've experienced myself the smell when I'm trying to have a meal, and someone, downwind is having a cigarette in a public area and all these things. Now, whether right or wrong, that if that's your value, that's now developed.
What makes it right or wrong, first of all, is it legal?
Well, that's not necessarily, that's philosophical, right?
No, what I'm trying to say is that the right or wrongness of something is that third level. What's going to happen to me? What do my friends say? What does the law say? Those are all defenses for justifying a particular decision.
So is that the discrepancy between just talking about values and talking about justice or fairness?
It could be.
Right? Because values is just what is the belief, right or wrong. Then if we start talking about is it right or wrong, now we're talking about the fairness or the justice of the value as opposed to the value itself.
Well, justice for me, it is part of I think you're tugging on it, and we could have a great conversation about that. But to cut through this, because we're on a podcast, let me just say, justice is a long-term and has to do with the implications and impact. So I'm going to be more specific. For me, it's something to be just. It, first of all, has to be an examined balance between self and other rights. What self and other rights. If it's my right to decide it, it's different than if I do it and I'm deciding for you. So part of it is the question of to what extent does how I'm going to answer that question, is it right or wrong, and was it just? Is it fair, and have I taken into consideration somebody else's wants or somebody else's values and so forth? So that's number one. Number two, what is the impact of my decision? So if I pass a law, for example, or if I have a lobby for a law that influences your behavior, just like it influences my behavior, that's a huge decision that I have to say, well, should I vote for that law, or should I institute or support that law? So part of it is it balanced? And the second one is it meaningful? And I'll tell you what I mean by that in a minute. And does it create harmony? Because I'm not interested in retribution for the solution. I'm interested in the restitution of what's happening with the decision I might advocate. So that you notice how what happened is justice takes into consideration the implications for the decision as well as the what's right, quote, by the law or someone else. So as we start to look at some of this stuff, it isn't just your prerogative or my prerogative that we need to take into consideration. So if you're trying it's the whole welfare of the whole.
So if you go to that step to think of others, I imagine your developed values would change over time. If I'm thinking like what's important to me.
Give me an example.
So if I think, smoking is okay because I smoke and I don't smoke, but let's say that I do, that's okay because it relaxes me, so I find that as a value. But now I start to take into consideration as to whether or not the impact I have on others, and maybe smoking indoors is not okay because it's affecting others. And then the next level, I think we were talking about justice is like, what does the law say about it, right? If the law says
right now the law is allowing you to smoke in public buildings,
but I still decide not to because I know it affects others. So now I'm taking that other step of how it affects others, I guess.
That's right. Do I want to take a stand that prevents them from doing so?
Yes.
That's the issue point.
There you go.
So the balance is the balance again. Mm-hmm. Fairness is a concept of balance, but meaningfulness is now getting into the implications or results of, and so is the question of harmony. So if I take away your right to smoke, how does that create a harmonious circumstance?
Yeah, so so in the case of smoking, like if I'm a smoker but you're not, and I know if I smoke next to you, it's gonna affect you, and that can cause a disruption in harmony.
Yeah, because my lungs are being affected by your behavior.
So even as a smoker, I can still agree if that maybe I should be smoking in public because it affects other people.
See, now that's why the compromises for the solutions of this. If we can create harmony, is if I said to you, "You're a smoker, I'm not." Can you live with the idea of not smoking in public buildings?
Yes.
You can live with that
as long as I can smoke outside.
Sure.
Right.
Okay, so then I don't have to pass a law that says there's no smoking. And we're going to do away with cigarettes or try to fight that. All I'm really saying is I'm not trying to prevent you from, if you'll pardon this, killing yourself.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to prevent it from you harming me if I go into a public building that you're in and you're smoking.
So the law is passed to prevent those who disagree with that. Say, I'm going to smoke inside because I want to, because I can.
Say that again?
So the law is passed for those that choose to smoke inside, even though it affects other people.
Yeah, you can't.
Right.
You can't.
That's why you pass
if
the
you
law.
did that, then I would begin to try to pass a law that prevents you from doing that in the presence of me or mine, any of my kids, or anybody of my relatives, or anybody else that I love. And as a matter of fact, I want to protect the welfare of the whole, and by saying, well, I want to do that for the rest of the people who are not smoking. And guess what? We have a very small minority of people that are smoking as compared to those who are non-smokers.
So how do we differentiate those two things in terms of values, right? This topic of the podcast on values. How do we differentiate which of that value, when is it social versus personal? Because what I mean by that is, if I'm saying I don't think anyone should be allowed to smoke in public because I don't like it, I would think, is that a personal focused value? Or if you say, I don't think anyone should be able to smoke in buildings because it's bad for everyone and I want society to be a better place,
then it suddenly has a social.
You could have the exact same value.
You could say,
but it could be personal or social focused depending on why you have that value.
You got it.
That's confusing.
It's not perfect, but what he's confused.
The outcome is different. We'll take it slow for you there.
I get confused a lot, but apparently that's
there
good.
Are
right?
so many other. There are so many other issues that are worth kicking around, such as automatic rifles or. I'm sorry. I know. I'm just saying the issue. I can't mention that it could be an issue for somebody.
No, I get it. No one ever said leadership was easy.
Oh no. We just said that we shouldn't be shooting kids in schools.
But again, this topic it can go very philosophical very quickly. It can fall into the topic of justice very quickly.
No, all of it's philosophical.
Maybe we should try to bring it back to more of an organizational. So now I think we're pretty clear on what is a value, how does it look, and the why behind a value in terms of whether it's a social focused value or an individual focused value, and the means versus the ends. I'll do one example just to differentiate between means and ends. The one that kind of helped me, it was sort of an aha moment for me. But my value of cleaning the house, keeping the house clean, and my wife's value of cleaning the house is different. But our ends value is the same. We both desire and have a value of having a clean house. We both enjoy having a clean house.
May I ask why?
We hardly ever have a clean house.
No. Can I ask why you value that?
Yeah. I think there's an affective aspect, just a feeling, right? It feels good to be in an organized place where you can.
Organization is different than cleanliness. So let's keep.
Man, you're getting technical.
No, because I really want to understand what you're saying.
Sure. Well, I don't know. I think you come into a clean house, it just feels more comfortable.
So could it be clean, but could it be picked up but not clean?
Oh, all right. I see where you're going with that. Why you got to be so smart?
Because of the argument.
But no, I get
why it's important
I hear
to do
what you're
it.
saying. If it's organized, you can find what you need. It doesn't mean that it's clean.
That's right.
It could be dirty.
But
I don't want to pick up
bacteria
my stuff
still there, and the cheese all over the floor.
Well, yeah, that's like you pull stuff out of the dishwasher and it's still got gunk in it.
And
now I got to clean it again.
Now you're getting it.
Right. So all right. So let's just say, you kind of mix in organization and cleanliness a little bit, but I think we we both appreciate a clean and organized house. Let's go with that, right? But our means value for how we get there is very different. And what I mean by that is I'm more into maintenance. On a day-to-day basis, I would rather do the dishes 3 or 4 times in a day and just clean a couple plates after every meal, right? And I value that, and that's a means value. Is how I want to get to that outcome of cleanliness.
That's right.
My wife is different. She'll throw the dishes in the sink for 3 or 4 days until they pile up, and then she throws them all in the dishwasher. But it drives me crazy, especially when because the kids just throw their plates in there if they even make it to the sink.
Can you
and
see
they don't
that
even rinse.
Your outcomes are different, and therefore your means are different, and therefore you don't necessarily want the same thing?
Well, I thought that the outcome was the same. At the end of the day, we want a clean and organized house.
At the end of the week is going to be what you're talking about.
Well, you're right, but how she gets to that is on a more incremental basis. Every 4 to 5 days, the house is clean and organized in a massive, kind of. But for me, it's more, no, let's just kind of maintain.
Clean as you go kind of mentality, yeah.
Well, I understand the
so
difference.
Again, not that either is good or bad.
No, we're not arguing you're right or wrong.
It's personal preferences and it's that value. But just I don't know. I always thought that was a good example of, or for me, it helped me understand the difference between means and ends. Right? How you get there, because they're both values, and some values can be the same, like honesty.
Sure. The problem is where you run into is that your values aren't. People don't understand, but oftentimes they'll hold a value for something that on one side that will be just the opposite of what they hold for a value on another side or on another issue.
So would that mean that it's programmed then and not?
Well, it just means it's not uniformly
it's not aligned.
consistent.
It's situational value or something?
Yeah, that's right. And it's not consistent with it.
So situational leadership is good. Situational value is not so good.
These snicks then, ladies and gentlemen, just disregard that comment. No, what I'm saying is that we hold, for example, I've run into people who say, I am against abortion. I'm not going to discuss that issue. All I'm going to say is, okay, are you for capital punishment? Yes, I am. Really?
Yeah, there's some aspects of
that seems to be inconsistent with the same rationale. I'm trying to protect the life of an unborn, but I'm not trying to protect the life of, let's say, a person who deserves to be.
If the foundational concept is life is sacred,
that's right.
It's okay to kill them when they're if they murder somebody, but it's not okay when it's a baby.
Now we're talking about it. And of course, those are different circumstances. I'm not trying to argue that. But all I'm really trying to say is that there should be some consistencies that cut across some of the things that you find yourself in if you're going to try to make a rationale stick. Mm-hmm. And of course, a lot of people say, I'm not interested in whether you believe what I believe. Mm-hmm. My response is, okay, then you won't get my support when you're trying to do something that doesn't make sense to me. But if you want one priority, and unfortunately, priorities are the only that's going to take us. That's what ultimately values take us down to. What are the priorities that you want to reinforce, and because those priorities are meaningful to you. Let's just take one now, business example. That's where
let's go organization.
One of the things that I've seen happen a lot is in organizations is that the expense reports turned in by organizations get really bounced off the wall. And people play with those things for all the wrong reasons. For what is it that we're doing? First of all, what is the policy or what is the outcome that you want when it comes to expenses? What do you want to see happen if you were the president of the company?
Bills paid on time, expenses tracked closely, profitable if it's a for-profit company.
Paying for what you should be paying for, nothing more.
Getting fair deals on
costs
and
you wouldn't
services.
Want. So if you don't make those things clear, And for the purposes of clarity, I'm going to give you one. I believe in accurate, fair expense reports being submitted. And what do I mean by accurate is that no taxi cabs not ridden in, hotel beds not slept in, airplane flights not taken. So I'm certainly starting to say these are all you don't take money for that.
Right.
Now, why is that? Because we're in this case, I'm the president of the company, and my position might be because the stakeholder or the stakeholder, the stockholder, does not get their return on their investment because that's the reason why we're in business to make money. And so if I'm in business to make money, I have to define my outcome in a way that allows us to define the behaviors I want for those outcomes. And so it's not just be honest. It's taxi cabs not ridden in, hotel bells not stepped in. So all of a sudden we're defining an outcome through the hows we want it and what it means to do whatever it is we're doing. Now, I'm not arguing that that's an unfair request on the part of the president. I don't think, in fact, as if I was a shareholder, I would see that as reasonable. Now, let's get a little more cranky about this. I was working with a company, a wonderful company, Vulcan Chemical, and they had a vision that said they wanted to produce quality chemical products and services that exceed the needs of the customer in an environmentally safe way. Ooh, that's pretty cool.
Is there like mission?
It's the purpose statement, it's a value. Certainly, it's a value statement, and so it's really clear what's the number one prominent value. It didn't say anything about economics, did it? What did it say?
Oh, it's helping the society.
Yeah, it's to produce quality chemical products and services that exceed the needs of the customer in an environmentally safe way. So they really were looking for an environmentally safe way as one of their very important how questions to what question, which is you can see that's good value statements. I'm not telling you they shouldn't do that or should do that. All I'm saying is that if you want the behaviors and you do believe in what it is you're saying, you have to say it in a way that's really clear. And so therefore an environmentally safe way is one of the upfront, and you mean it and you do it and you monitor it, which is what they did.
I want to take that one step further. I mean, it's also, what if there's two values of being like environmentally safe and then having high quality or at conflict?
Because the trick with values is they have to be prioritized. They have to be prioritized. So if it's a more environmentally safe way and it's not economic or it doesn't meet doesn't meet the second part of it, somebody has to say number one is here, number two is here, and here's here's why. And so if we went back, that's the problem in some ways to the whole question of abortions and how they're supported or why are they justified. It would seem to me that there has to be a set of how statements in it, such as except in the cases of X and Y, except as in case of rape or incest. Those kinds of things are the beginnings of the compromises that we need to make if we're going to get along with each other. Because your how is really important and influences my outcome. And so coming back to your example with clean and organized, you could see one of them is more important to you than it was for your partner. Not that you're fighting over it, but I mean, it's that you just, the emphasis is different. And then that has to be somehow set up as, okay, when this happens, this comes before that.
Yeah, I try to say, you know what, just rinse the dishes. And I'll clean them. Just don't throw them in the sink and let them dry out.
Well, I know some people who say that the rinsing the dishes is a waste of water, and so
Yeah.
put them in the and get them done.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. That kind of goes back. I think of my kids as program values. They come home from school after
yeah.
environmental lesson. Daddy, turn off the sink. You're wasting water. You just took a 45-minute shower, and I've had to turn the lights off in your room 16 times today.
Well, that's
Why do you believe that? Is that your value?
What a marvelous opportunity. That's right. I mean, you're getting quicker and better at the idea of establishing developed values on their part by saying, never mind what I said, because oftentimes is I don't care what I said, you do what I told you to do.
There was a comedian I watched a few months ago. I think I told Jimmy about this, where he was talking about his kids growing up, you know, and coming out of the house, and his son dropped out of college or something and moved back in the house. This is a comedian talking about this, but he said he made a rule. He's like, look, you're welcome to come back to the house, but you got to help out. You got to contribute. So you got to pay one of the bills. And so his son had to pay the electric bill, and the comedian said there was nothing more satisfying in my life than when my son started yelling at my other kids about why are you leaving this light on? Amazing how your values change, and all of a sudden you have to you understand the consequences of it.
Yeah. You know, that kind of stuff is really great. That is just because it sharpens what is developed. It sharpens instead of just the acquired programmed value. It's a clearly a developed value, and that's what you want, because people act on developed values as best they can.
So, how about an example from an organizational perspective at more of like a deck plate, first line supervisor type of level? How does a team lead who's leading a team of 5 or 10 people take this this value discussion and the topic and
I've often
apply
wondered that how people and managers value what they send off as signals for what they valued. And this is really an important question. So I've done 3 or 4 empirical studies. I don't know if I'll share them with you. That the perceptions of the leader's values have have a lot to do with how they feel in terms of the amount of work passion they have for their work, or how they feel about the manager's approach to whether they're good managers and whether they're the kind of people that they want to work for and with.
So is that kind of twofold? Do they perceive their leader as having values that they agree with or align with, and then also does their leader live those values?
That's part of it. There is a consequence for having me values, meaning what's good for me.
Individually focused values. Right?
Yeah. So if I have a value for my own personal prerogatives and freedoms as a leader, then that often gets confused as you don't really care about me, and you don't really care about the things that are important. So don't tell me you want to do this when I see you doing that with the expense report or something like that. That's the me question that gets kicked into it. And managers, interesting. Managers make the value decisions many times based upon the prerogative. Their own prerogative, not necessarily the impact that the decision is making on the employee. So if I say, okay, I want to go to this training, and I know I've had so much time off, but I don't have enough time to be able to go to it, but I have to be able to do it, and the manager would say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. That person needs the skill. They would use that training to get better and better to the company, but I'm not going to give it to you, because if I do it for you, I have to do it for everybody.
Right.
And so the precedence they make decisions on what they have to defend and what will be set as a priority, not on the basis of the impact it has on the individual or the company and what the signals it will send out. So it's such a, like you gotta like, come on,
I've got another one. This hybrid work, this work environment we go into, and we talk about like, work-life balance is so important. That's a value. We're going to make sure that family, takes precedence. But yet, then we want you to come into work 5 days a week. And but COVID, people move away to more affordable places, so maybe they're an hour away from work now. Yeah, but that was a decision that you made. So I still want you, where the job can actually allow for 3 to 5 days in the office and maybe 1 day at home. And so there's this conflict of where I thought work-life balance is super important. And now you're telling me that I have to come in 5 days a week, which my commute is now 2 hours as opposed to maybe 20 minutes where it was 4 years ago. And there's no concern or it just, again, they say work life is important, family is important, but you still got to come in 5 days a week, which there's like, I'm seeing that in the workforce where it just doesn't make any sense. Like what the leaders are saying, what they value, or their actions are kind of going against that. And they're trying to make everyone come into the work, which we know at this time is very difficult for a lot of.
I think the case you're bringing up is a good one, because when pre-COVID time, it was everybody at their post. Yeah. But during COVID, everybody could understand it. Well, gee, we are in a tough situation. We do have extenuating circumstances where people do get sick if they're present, and so there's an attempt to try to take into consideration the workforce's health needs. The interesting thing was that once they figured that they could do their job and still do and don't go and use that commute time, or so all of a sudden they don't want to go into work, and it would be perfectly legitimate not to do that as long as their work didn't suffer. And we didn't have the trust in the workforce that it would. Now, obviously, if you're in the healthcare business, you have to be on site so there's a whole bunch of extenuating circumstances. But I guess the point I'm making is that the great walkout, the walk off the job kind of thing, had its pitfalls, but it also had some ideas that really are important, because the work time and the workspace and the way we treat managers, or direct reports are changing.
Right. Well, I just think there's it's not all or nothing. There is a balance that needs to be struck, and I guess what I was trying to highlight was the fact that some supervisors are out there thinking that it's important to get back to the way we were, 3-4 years ago.
Because that's the way it was done.
No other reason.
So the value would be they value the in-person versus, and getting the work done, or they believe that being in person is going to improve getting the work done, versus others who believe that having flexibility is more important. And, some of that might be driven because of their own personal needs, and some of it may be driven because they think that's how everyone should be.
I just think it's important that if your value and that you want to impart on others and lead that way, that you kind of,
And how can you be authentic as a leader if you don't understand your own values?
Well, right? if you don't understand your own values, it's absolutely right on. So I mean, that's part of one of the things that I want, and you want people to get out of these podcasts or out of the program, this whole issue that we're talking about now, which is contextual leadership. Is that we have to get managers being congruent with what they expect and how they act. Otherwise, it's really clear it will run counter to the manager's outcomes and their productivity with their direct reports, because most people are not going to go. They're not going to do. If Gandhi didn't stop eating sugar, then guess what?
100%.
Yeah, people. What the heck with you?
And they see it, and the subordinates see that.
You have to be the change you want to do. So there's a social responsibility, to act behavior. So if we look at what's going on in government, whether it's Supreme Court justices or whether I'm not saying that anyone is less than the other, but if you're off taking trips, whether you're a senator or a Supreme Court justice, if you're out taking trips at the expense of somebody else or at the benefit of somebody else, that dog don't hunt.
So definitely it's a complicated process, and my goodness, we could probably talk for another couple hours on this stuff. So, but we want to make sure we get to persona, which is the next podcast. So why don't we maybe break here? Is there any last thought? Oh yeah, joke police over here.
I really don't have one.
Really,
I've kind of blown all my jokes out today. I've got to get something that might be.
I'm gonna just look one up.
You gonna look one up?
All right.
Did I do the one about how the hamburger introduced his wife?
No, we haven't. Oh no.
No. So how does a hamburger introduce his wife?
How does a hamburger introduce his wife?
Meet Patty. Come on, that was a good one.
Yes,
you know where I got that? I got that from a homeless guy outside of a Starbucks. I paid him $1. He had a sign, $1 for a joke.
Hey, looks like Cookie like that
Cookie
joke.
came by. All right, well, we'll call it for this one, and we'll get into persona on the next one.
Yep.
All right. Congrats! You made it to the end of the episode. Thanks for tuning in. We genuinely hope that you found value in our conversation. If you liked it, please click that like button below and subscribe so that you can stay up to date on our current episodes. And if you didn't like it, you can click the dislike button, but make sure you click it twice. We're eager to hear from you, whether it's your thoughts, questions, topic ideas, or if you're interested in our leadership training and consulting support. Leave us a comment below or reach out to us directly at info@intrinsicfirst.com. We're open to any and all feedback. Thanks again for joining us. We look forward to having you back for more insightful leadership discussion. Until next time.